The cannons never stopped. Day after day, smoke covered the walls as explosions echoed across the fortress. The defenders repaired the damage through the night, only to face another bombardment at sunrise. Weeks turned into months, but the city refused to fall. Then 1 year passed, then 5, then 10. Still, the siege continued. Soldiers came and went, commanders changed, yet the fighting never truly ended. 26 years, one city, one war. It became the longest siege in recorded history. How could a single fortress survive against one of the most powerful empires on Earth for so long? This wasn't just another battle. It wasn't even a normal war. It became part of everyday life. Children were born inside the city walls, grew up listening to the sound of cannons, and became soldiers themselves before the siege was over. For an entire generation, war was the only life they had ever known. Outside the walls, the Ottoman Empire refused to give up. One army replaced another. New cannons arrived. Fresh soldiers took the place of those who had fallen. Attack after attack crashed against the fortress, but the Venetian defenders refused to surrender. Every breach was rebuilt. Every assault was answered with fierce resistance. Every small victory came at a terrible cost. As the years passed, the siege consumed an unimaginable number of lives. By the end, more than 100,000 soldiers had been killed or wounded, not in one great battle, but in the endless struggle for a single city. The fortress had become far more than a military objective. It had become a symbol of endurance, determination, and survival. So why didn't the defenders surrender? And why was the Ottoman Empire willing to spend 26 years trying to capture one fortress? To understand the answer, we have to go back to the year 1648, when one of history's longest and most exhausting sieges had only just begun. The year was 1648. On the horizon, the Ottoman fleet appeared like a moving city. Hundreds of warships filled the sea, carrying tens of thousands of soldiers toward one destination, Candia, the capital of Crete and one of the strongest fortresses in the Mediterranean. The Ottoman commanders expected the campaign to be short: break the walls, capture the city, raise the Ottoman flag, end the war. But they had badly underestimated the fortress standing before them. Candia had been strengthened for decades. Its massive walls, deep bastions, and powerful defenses were designed to withstand the most destructive cannons of the age. It wasn't just another city. It was one of the hardest fortresses in Europe to conquer. Then the bombardment began. Ottoman cannons fired day and night, shaking the ground beneath the defenders' feet. Stone walls cracked, towers crumbled, and thick smoke covered the skyline. From a distance, it looked as though the city couldn't survive another day, but every time the smoke cleared, the walls were still standing. The defenders rushed to repair the damage before the next barrage began. Weeks turned into months, months turned into years, yet neither side was willing to surrender. The Ottomans built trenches closer and closer to the city, while the Venetians worked tirelessly to rebuild broken walls and strengthen their defenses. Every sunrise brought another bombardment. Every night brought another desperate struggle to keep the fortress alive. As the years passed, the Ottomans realized that smashing the walls wasn't enough, so they changed their strategy. If they couldn't destroy the fortress from above, they would attack from below. Military engineers began digging secret tunnels beneath the battlefield. Day after day, they pushed deeper underground, packing the tunnels with huge amounts of gunpowder. Their goal was simple: blow apart the walls from underneath and create a breach large enough for thousands of soldiers to storm the city. But the Venetians refused to sit and wait. They began digging tunnels of their own, listening for enemy miners beneath the ground. Soon, a second battle was unfolding in complete darkness, where soldiers fought beneath the earth with picks, swords, and explosives. The siege was no longer being fought only above the walls. It had become an underground war unlike anything Europe had ever seen, and the deadly struggle beneath Candia was only making the longest siege in history even more brutal. The fortress had survived the first years, but the hardest years were still to come. The tunnels collapsed, but the war refused to end. Year after year, fresh Ottoman soldiers arrived to replace the fallen. More cannons were dragged into position, more trenches were dug, more assaults were launched against the battered walls. The battlefield was never truly quiet. Even on the calmest days, everyone knew another attack was only a matter of hours away. Inside Candia, life became a daily struggle for survival. Food grew scarce, clean water was difficult to find. Disease spread through the crowded streets, claiming lives that the enemy never could. Families stretched their last supplies as far as possible, sharing pieces of bread and whatever little remained. Yet despite the hunger and exhaustion, the city gates never opened. The defenders refused to surrender. Outside the walls, the Ottoman Empire continued its relentless attacks. Wave after wave of soldiers charged the fortress. Some managed to reach the walls. Others disappeared in explosions as hidden mines collapsed beneath them. At times, fierce hand-to-hand fighting erupted inside shattered breaches. But every time the attackers thought victory was within reach, the Venetians fought them back once again. As the 1660s arrived, the siege had become more than a war. It had become a way of life. Children who had been born after the siege began were now old enough to stand on the walls beside their fathers. An entire generation had grown up without ever knowing peace. For them, the sound of cannons was as familiar as the sunrise, but no fortress could endure forever. By 1669, the defenders had reached their limit. Food was almost gone, ammunition was nearly exhausted. Disease and constant fighting had broken what years of bombardment could not. After 26 years of resistance, only one choice remained. The city surrendered. The Siege of Candia was finally over. More than 100,000 men had lost their lives during the struggle. The fortress had not fallen because its walls were weak. It fell because the people defending them had nothing left to give. Their courage had outlasted their supplies. Today, the Siege of Candia is remembered as one of the longest and most remarkable sieges in human history. 26 years, one city, one fortress that refused to surrender until every possible hope had been exhausted. A story of endurance, sacrifice, and determination that history has never forgotten.